Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Well, today we're going to continue our ongoing discussions about the war between the Russian Federation, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and its proxy Ukrainian forces. Now, before I begin, I had the opportunity to do a interview over at the Cassandra Project. I will post the name of that channel in the information section, and you can go over there and watch the interview between me and the operator of that channel, the Cassandra Project. So feel free. Now, part of that conversation that we had over at the Cassandra Project, that interview, is about comparing and contrasting the Cold War, going back to the 1960s, specifically the Bay of Pigs, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and comparing and contrasting what is happening now in terms of the war that is happening between Russia and, again, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, and its proxy Ukrainian forces. Now, look, what is happening now, right now, is more serious, much more serious, than what occurred during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Remember, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, there was not what is essentially a hot war. There was not a direct engagement in which U.S. forces were fighting Russian troops and Cuban forces for the island nation state of Cuba. Now, what is happening right now is we are seeing large-scale military operations, the most serious military operations that has ever been recorded between Russian forces and the United States, NATO, and its proxy forces. We are seeing every resource. We are seeing every weapon system being used in this conflict now. We are now seeing strategic weapon systems, long-range, low-observable weapon systems that are designed to penetrate very robust air defense systems and attacking targets hundreds of miles inside of the Russian Federation. These are not Ukrainian missiles. Some people are saying that these are Ukrainian-designed weapon systems that are being used. That's not the case. These are NATO weapon systems. These are systems designed by the United Kingdom or the United States and are being used against Russian forces. Now look, we as humans have never not used a weapon system in our possession. So the likelihood that this could escalate even further, as I've talked before, is incredibly likely. Remember, the Russians are going to win, or the Ukrainians and NATO are going to win. That's the track that we're on right now. The Russians are not going to lose. Okay? And again, if you compare and contrast the Cuban Missile Crisis, the gauntlet was thrown down. The United States was not going to have those missile systems in Cuba. Russia is not going to have an Aegis Ashore system in western Ukraine. They are not going to allow whatever entity exists in terms of the Ukraine to join the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. They're not going to allow that to happen. So then what happens? So right now, both sides are committed to a victory. The Russians are committed to victory. NATO is committed to victory. The United States is committed to victory. So does this escalate? Or does détente occur and one side essentially is going to have to back down? But I can tell you, the Russians are not going to back down on this. If it was someplace other than the Ukraine, maybe. But this is a red line that has been crossed that Russia cannot gravitate away from. They have no choice. So this war is going to continue. And as I've talked about before, the Ukrainian front lines are starting to break down. I'm going to go back real quick and go back just before the beginning of September and let you watch what has happened in these frontline areas in this Donbas offensive. Let me go out a little bit more. There we go. So let's go forward. The Russians, as we speak, have increased their capacity to produce missile systems. When I say missile systems, I mean systems other than glided, satellite-guided bombs. This includes Iskanders, KH-101s, Calibers, Kinjal missile systems. The Russians right now are producing approximately 170 of these systems per month. So they've greatly increased their capacity, and probably within another few months, we'll see the Russians being able to produce 200 to 300 of these weapon systems per month. And it will continue to steadily increase as the Russians continue to enhance and perfect their production capacity for these missile systems. Additionally, they're spending about $1 billion a month on these weapon systems. The United States is not spending anywhere near close to that amount in terms of what the Russians are producing right now. And the Russian military, as we talked about before, is continuing to get bigger. Again, the Russians are not going to lose in Ukraine. They can't. No matter what that means, no matter what that end game looks like, even if they have to escalate to the use of tactical nuclear weapons, I firmly believe they will do that to achieve victory. Now, the question is, if we go back in time to the Cuban Missile Crisis and we look at the leadership that existed in the White House in the 60s under Kennedy, and you compare and contrast the leadership that exists now in a much more volatile environment, what exists right now in the White House and whoever is running the country, meaning the United States, is far, far less competent than what existed back in the 60s. I firmly believe that. Right now, we don't even know who is running the country in the United States right now. We have no clue. It's not Joseph Biden. It's not the cackling queen, Kamala Harris. So the question is, who is running the country? Ignorance is bliss. The uninformed urbanite here in the United States actually believes that if there is a nuclear exchange, they could be safe because the United States, they perceive the United States has this capability to interdict Russian nuclear missiles. That's not the case. That is not the case. If the balloon goes up and there is a nuclear exchange, it's highly likely here in the United States that you will not even know a nuclear war has started unless you're near a target site, or you are near an impact zone where you can hear the concussive blast. And possibly your windows get blown out or something like that. But most people here in the U.S. right now obtain their news via the internet. Most people don't listen to the radio. They listen to FM. Many of the electric cars that are being produced now in the United States don't even have the capacity of getting AM radio stations. So at the onset of a nuclear exchange and large-scale cyber attack that would precede the nuclear attack, you would lose all capability of getting information. And once the bombs hit, and again, unless you're at an impact site or near an impact site, you may not even know what is happening. You just will lose all capability to get information. It'll just disappear. We as a society will go within about 30 minutes a society at apogee in which you can get anything you want delivered to your house in hours, to a dark age. That's how quick it will happen. And you may not even know it's happening. All right, well, there we have it. More to come. As always, thank you for joining us. Have a good day.